Hello, you're listening to the Neil Lampton Show. My name's Joey, and I'm joined by Paul.
All right, mate.
And by Neil.
Hello.
It's a classic lineup. Right, just before we start, just to be absolutely clear, just because we lost a game doesn't mean that we're not still definitely going up, right?
Correct.
Correct. Moments of the week. Neil, why don't you start?
This week's moment of the week was Luke Thomas missing that chance very early on, which I believe would have changed the complexion of the match. There we go.
Very much a sliding doors moment, would you describe it as?
Could well have been.
What do you think would have happened had he have taken that chance?
I don't know. It just would have been a different game. That opens up all kind of possibilities. I just think we started off on the front foot. I don't want to get too much into it, but we started off on the front foot. Doing that based on the fact that we'd scored an early goal, compounding kind of the fact that we had high on confidence from the last game. Things could have been a little bit different. They might have felt a little bit differently about the match, but these things happen.
They do indeed. Paul, your moment of the week.
The mature way that the players for England dealt with the completely unnecessary atmosphere they had to play in yesterday, and the fact that UEFA don't seem to be able to stamp it out, but at least the players acted in an incredible way. I can't even begin to imagine what it must be like to play under those sort of atmosphere. So kudos to the players who kept their cool and then just showed how good they were as players.
I've got to be careful here because I don't want to sound like I'm sort of condoning it or anything. But what would if you're UEFA, and obviously they have got to do more. That's not in doubt. But what more can they do? I sort of think if you are coming up against a country that might be further behind or less progressive than our own, I sort of think, can they overnight change prevailing attitudes towards people from a certain section of a crowd? Obviously, it's abhorrent, and obviously it's completely unacceptable. But I don't know whether it's a bit too simplistic to say, "Oh, UEFA should stamp it out." I kind of think it's a phenomenal problem, isn't it?
The problem is you're looking at it from. It's not like this is the first time it's happened in that particular country, and you almost knew. Well, you did know that that's what the players were going to go through. UEFA knew that that's what the players were going to go through. So it's not like, oh, it's a one-off, let's give them the benefit of the doubt.
No, I'm not saying that, but what would you do? What do you do?
I think you just basically say, okay, you have a qualifying campaign where you either don't play any home games or your home games are played behind closed doors. But also, the Football Federation for that country's got to sort of start taking the lead as well.
And I agree with that, yeah.
Maybe it'd be better if the Football Association for Montenegro basically said, look, we're not having gates. We're playing completely behind closed doors, unless you can behave yourself. And as soon give them the opportunity. If they continue to do it, then you just go behind closed doors again. I think because what me and Neil very briefly sort of. There's no point for reduction. That's no point because they're not going to qualify anyway. So you're not stopping them from qualifying for a major tournament by denying them points. Fining them just seems ridiculous because that's the Football Association that's getting fined. It's not stopping the fans or making the fans look bad. I think the only way you can stop them is basically taking away the reason they're there, which is to watch the football. That's it, isn't it? There's no other sort of... or you just ban the team completely and say, look, you can't do this. You're out until you come back and you can prove you can. But then how long do you give them? And to some extent, it's not the players' fault either.
But yeah, you can't. You're right though, aren't you? Because what you need to try and do. I mean, the reason why these people do it in the stands is because they're able to do it within the stands, and culturally, it seems to me like there's no kind of deterrent for them to do it within the stands. That everybody kind of accepts it within the culture, and the same goes for what happened the other week with Jack Grealish. That guy ran onto the pitch, punched him. He got like cheers and everything because it was kind of weirdly within that moment accepted within his peer group. He did it because he thought it would make him look cool, and he's kind of got his cool points. What you need to do is stamp it out in a way which actually the act of doing it has, like you say, has a fundamental impact on the people around them, and it's so complex. I mean, it's very difficult to say, okay, right, we'll ban them from them having their sort of home games for the next campaign. and for that to kind of filter down to society or like the culture within the ground. But I think if it becomes a more regular thing where that's almost like a default punishment, though that sort of harsh level of punishment straight away, you sort of think, well, how many of those can they withstand without somehow that having a bigger effect on the people within the ground, where you sort of think actually nobody's going to want to do it anymore because it has such a harsh sort of consequences.
I know it's not a perfect like-for-like comparison, but you know when that really small and really vile subsection of our fans were singing "She Said Yes, Marlon" when we had Marlon King?
Do
you think that would have warranted a full, which I think is comparable? I think is absolutely disgusting. Do you think that would have warranted a behind closed doors style game? Do you not think that just penalises like the 95, if not more, % of people in the ground that did behave themselves and did just go to a game? I'm not. The difficulty is that what I don't want to do is I don't want to kind of do that really insidious thing, which is kind of go, oh well, there's nothing we can do about it, or blah 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 blah. I just wonder if it's a bit whitewashy as an outcome to.
The problem is we kind of have to create this arbitrary line about what is acceptable and what isn't acceptable, and I think it's obvious, especially now, that racism is not acceptable at football matches, and whether different cultures think differently, you kind of have, if you want to cut it out, you have to establish that as the de facto. This is how it is. It's just not acceptable, and I know what you're saying, and it's incredibly nuanced. And like you sort of say, well, how come that's not acceptable? But they're saying this really dreadful thing. How is that acceptable?
No. I'm not comparing the.
I know, absolutely. Yeah, you're not going that. But I think you're right to flag it. It does become very arbitrary. But also, it's kind of that's how you set rules in society anyway. The law is arbitrary. We make up what makes sense and what doesn't. And as I'm speaking, I realise this is becoming a really interesting podcast, which I'd like to take us on a whole different route, but probably isn't. Considering it's supposed to be a short one, isn't the best way for us to go.
The only thing I'd throw in is I completely agree with Neil's point. I think it's down to expectation and allowance within the ground. Now, if someone shouted racist abuse in the Rico, I'd like to think that person would be very quickly shouted down, not encouraged. And I think the thing with the Marlon King thing is maybe the rest of the fan base should have taken it on themselves to drown it out by booing or basically making it deemed as an unacceptable song. The fact is, if you're shouting something racist and the person next to you joins in, then you do get the herd mentality where more and more people will join in. And I think it's down to that allowance or that acceptance of making those noises and it being seen to be by your peer group to be acceptable is the issue. Yeah. But if you've got one person in the Rico trying to do it and the person next to him turns around and goes, look, continue with that, I'm going to clout you in the face. They don't do it, do they? And that's the big thing. That's the only way you can stamp it out is by making it socially unacceptable. And that could only become through the fact that, look, if you keep doing this, we won't be here for the next home game. Because I think the Birmingham City one was a case of they were lucky they got, they haven't had bigger sanctions on them, because you can't do that. You can't be seen to be letting or for that to take place in your ground without condemning it in the highest order, because within the same day there was an Arsenal fan.
There was three in the weekend, weren't it? It was Birmingham, Man United, and someone else.
Rangers,
that was it. Yeah, James
or Celtic.
Yeah,
You're right. It's Rangers.
And once people start seeing it as something that's deemed as acceptable, people start doing it more, and that's we don't want to go back to how football used to be, where you'd have everyone was caged in. It's not the way we want it to be. I think, as I agree with Neil, part of the problem with the Birmingham City fans wasn't the idiot who went onto the pitch. It were the people who clapped and cheered him when he did it. And regardless of what you think of Jack Grealish or your feelings on the opposing team, that wasn't acceptable. It was never going to be acceptable. And I think the fans who cheered him let themselves down as much as the guy did himself.
To what extent, with the racism that we're talking about, is it down to the fact that actually the most prejudiced against class white lads, who I've been reading are in for a very difficult time and actually can't even say anything these days? I've been reading. Do you think that plays into some of it?
Well, we've been told by Andrew Russell not to discuss Brexit anymore. And having listened to him on the radio, where he was on there to discuss Brexit, and the first thing he did was mention Coventry City, I think, kettle pot black, Mr. Andrew. No.
Well, I'm going to finish off moments of the week and seg perfectly into the Oxford game by saying that my moment of the week was watching what I can only describe as the most passive-aggressive non-argument I've ever seen between two of my favourite Cov fans, namely Paul Knowles and Neil Allison, on Twitter the other day, who, through what you could hear the teeth grinding as it was being said, agreed that football's all about differing opinions, isn't it? Did you you agreed to disagree very wholeheartedly? I remember.
I meant every word of it. I meant everything I said, and I stand by it.
Paul, do you think that all opinions are welcome?
Obviously not. You should know that by now. But there are certain people whose opinion I'm willing to listen to more than others, and I'm willing to disagree with Neil a bit slower than some of the other idiots who correspond with on Twitter.
Well, you'll be very happy to know that we're going to ask for Neil's opinion on the Oxford game immediately.
And I embrace every second of it.
Oh, well, that would set me up, hasn't it? I feel a lot of pressure on this one, mainly because of the discussion we had the other day. And it doesn't... I think what it comes down to for me is a lot of it's down to expectation. And it's not all... Also, it's not necessarily down to a right or wrong or opinion. It's down to how I kind of assess that match and what I valued from that match and what I thought wasn't particularly good from that match. So, all told, it was a poor performance. I don't think we did ourselves any justice, especially given the kind of the run of form we've been on. I think we didn't react very well to a daft goal, and that was basically, in my mind, the turning point where we very quickly lost a lot of that sort of swagger and confidence, which I do think we kind of had early on in the match. So if you start from the beginning, it's very obvious that we started brightly. We created sort of lots of gaps, and we gave them a lot to think about very early on in that sort of opening sort of 5 minutes where we should have scored a goal. And Thomas again was the guy who had. You've got to say it's an easy chance. He has options there. He can lift it. He can put it to the side. He can send it back to where it kind of came from. What he's ended up doing is yet again it's kind of hitting it directly at the keeper, which is frustrating. But I don't think that miss alone kind of hindered us. I think we continued kind of in the same vein. We were still fairly sort of high paced for those opening periods. I think. Was it Bakayoko? He had another chance. He hit. It was a great cross from Mason. Bakayoko hit the woodwork, and again, if that had gone in, you kind of sense that would breaking the deadlock at that point would have then set us up to kind of move our way through the gears and kind of see the match kind of more into our control. What I will say is, while I thought it was a really sort of bright opening from the team on the pitch, I think what I noticed off the pitch was, especially with like this, the atmosphere was a kind of a real tenseness about everybody within the ground. From minute one, there was no easing into it. There was kind of really, really oddly, I felt like more often than not, every single mistake. So every time the ball was given away, there was an enhanced sort of sound of annoyance from the ground, and that is kind of not normal for people to get upset by every mistake, because people do. But I really struggle with the idea that people could get so exasperated so early on from every single error, or not even try and see the positive in kind of what we're trying to do. Because if you start from the standpoint, and this is really sort of existential, but if you start from the standpoint that we don't need perfection on the football pitch, that's not what we're after. But so as long as you don't need it, when things don't quite go your way, you should still be able to rationalise it and kind of say, okay, well, he tried something there. That was a good attempt. It didn't quite come off. Unfortunately, our standpoint seemed to be at the weekend where we were trying stuff that we ordinarily would have done. And when it didn't come off, the response to that from a crowd was really, really quite tense. And it was... I can only sense that has an impact on the players. It feels like it does, and I get it. We're at with the closing sort of stage of the season. That was a game where we desperately needed to win to really sort of consolidate our stance as what we wanted to see ourselves as one of the favourites to get into the playoffs. Ultimately, we didn't do it, and as we moved into the second half, like I say, we conceded that goal, which was of our own making. So Hyam, who I think has been imperious this year, he's been a stunning centre back for us. Just lost concentration. He made a mistake, and it knocked it out for a necessary corner, which threw pressure on ourselves. And then they back post header. Once again, Burge wasn't the most dominant, and he's kind of continuing that period of sort of erratic form, and it kind of allowed the ball to go into the net. And I wouldn't say that they didn't deserve it, because I've really neglected Oxford at this point, but I think they did make it very hard for us. I think they were a tenacious team. I'd say they were a dirty team, just because I think a lot of what they were doing, a lot of pulls, they were niggly, they were getting their way with it, and they continued to do it because they were getting away with it. All power to them, almost. You sort of think, well, in situations like that, sometimes you wonder why we're not quite as dirty, because it seems to me that often the referees, if they've got it in their mind that they're going to kind of allow that sort of stuff to go in, or they're just so kind of not poor, but they're just not quite up to the speed of the match where they don't see everything. You kind of think, well, give as good as you get, but we didn't really give that. So yeah, that's kind of. We got to the point where we let in the goal, and then it's that point where I think things started to kind of cascade, and we didn't really then know how to adjust ourselves, or kind of, we ran out of ideas fairly quickly, I would suggest. And I don't want to go into too much detail as the game wore on, because I just felt like that's kind of how it went. We've been in that situation before where it seemed like it drained us. We were letting the goal, and we just weren't able to kind of counter that. Yeah.
Can we just go back to Burge for a bit?
We can.
Is it fair to say that he's been rubbish for weeks now?
I don't think they put in the first half. They put in exactly the same corner, and it's a great corner. And I've seen quite a few people go, "Oh, no keeper goes to claim that cross." I'm sorry, they just don't.
No, it's not about the claiming, though, is it? Yeah.
And then basically, he doesn't save the ball on the line. To some extent, I think if he not nearly saves it on the line. If he does save it on the line, the guy's 1 yard out and taps it in anyway. And I'm not taking it. I think he should have saved it. I just don't think that's majorly his. I don't see that goal, and when I've seen it, I'm just he should have saved the ball that was powered in for him from about 3 yards from a great header from a great corner. I think
he doesn't take sole blame. I think there are other factors. I think. Yeah.
And we concede that goal. We concede that goal a lot, where a guy's got a free header from 3 yards. I think
the crucial part here is almost a body language thing. Weirdly to say, but I think the way the goal happens, you see he's with kind of hidden almost on his goal line. He's very restricted to the goal line. He's falling back into his goal, and I think it's kind of symbolic of his performance over like you say, the previous weeks, where, aside from kind of he had a little bit of resurgence, or a libergence, as I would like to say, after that big mistake. But prior to that, he had been going through weeks and weeks where he was really he's playing within himself, it seemed, and he sort of got hit back on his line.
I know it's easy to say, because there's the context of him possibly moving in the summer. I just don't think he looks like he's concentrating. I just think I think he's pretty rock solid at everything, and I like the fact that I don't think he's the best keeper in the world, but I never understand why he comes in for so much criticism when he does so much consistently well. And I just think he looks like he switched off recently. I don't know whether maybe he had that concussion. You don't know whether that knocks you, or you don't know whether he is just knackered, or whether he's carrying an injury. There's all sorts of different things that can be the explanation for it. But it just looks like he's conceded goals and made mistakes that I just don't really think are like indicative of how he's played over the last 2 years or so.
I reckon he's a bit scared as well. Honestly, I think there's an element of kind of fear there at the moment, just because he was knocked very heavily by that big mistake against Walsall. That's kind of the line in my imaginary stand where I sort of think, at that point, that was something where he started to think, oh shit, I am actually fallible. Because before that, he was up there as player of the season, no doubt about it. He was saving us game in, game out. He was absolutely incredible. We got to that point and he made what was a really bad mistake. And you either go two ways. You either go where you puff your chest out, you say, well, fuck that, I've made that mistake, and then you come out the next game all going, blazing and you really sort of assert yourself, or you did unfortunately what he did, which was actually he kind of went within his shell a lot, and he started then making more and more, like you say, these rash decisions, and it could be concentration, it could be his mind's wandering and he's not kind of focused as much as he was. But I think a lot of it is just down to sheer sort of almost assertion, so a belief in his own abilities. He's lost his, because back in the last season as well, he saved us so often, not from just saves, but catching the ball from coming out and claiming at those moments where you just want your keeper to just take it, just please save us here, and he did that. He was doing that regularly. You don't see that a lot from Burgess at the moment, do you?
Paul, thoughts?
I sort of agree with where you're coming from. I just think that goal is, yeah.
Too specific. No, not definitely. I agree. Not just his fault on the goal.
And I think, but it's just before that, as you say, for the first 5 minutes, we absolutely hammered them. Luke Thomas has had a sitter, which he's missed again. He had another one where it was a really good opportunity to do something, and he wasted the opportunity. And in the second half, he had a really good opportunity, and again hit the keeper. And by that point, we could have been 2 or 3-0 up by the time they had that corner. I know things don't work out like that. They don't get that corner if we scored our goals. We had our opportunities. We're wasteful in front of goal. I just think it was an odd performance anyway. I think if we'd have taken one of those early opportunities, going back to what you said at the start, I think we probably would have won. I think that's. But I watched that performance. I didn't think, I've seen loads of people really sort of be down on that performance. I just don't think it was any different from Fleetwood. In fact, it was marginally at times better than Fleetwood. And it was exactly the same against Accrington. And I think that's where we are as a team. I don't think we're an amazing team. We're a solid team, a good team, as long as we take the lead. And I think Oxford have got to take a lot of credit. I think their 2 centre-backs were really good. And their midfield just used the ball wiser than us. Yeah, I think they did some of the dark arts, as it were. But I think what they also did was when they had the ball, they didn't waste it. The other thing which they did really clever, they've obviously watched us recently. Sterling had his worst game for a while. Bayliss had his worst game for a while. Luke Thomas has been in and out of the game recently anyway. I thought they completely, if you watched when we had the ball at the back, most of the time, if we're on our game with the ball's at Hyam's feet, they went, no, Hyam's obviously better at football than Jordan Willis. So Willis had the ball a lot, which means the ball goes out of play, or it's just crap. And I know we've probably gone to the Bright thing. I thought they managed Bright really well, where they never committed themselves, especially in the second half. When we were chasing the game, they were like, yeah, you can have the ball in your half. We're not bothered. As soon as you come into our half, we're not going to commit ourselves. We're just going to make sure you can only pass the ball sideways. And I think Oxford just nailed us. They absolutely nailed us. And I think that's our issue. Once we went 1-0 behind, we just couldn't cope. We just, no player, after we went behind, stood up and went, I'm going to drag us forward, or I'm going to get us out of this, or I'm going to step it up now. Everyone just like, what's the easiest option? What's the least mistake I can make? What's the easiest way I can play this ball? They all did it. And I think if you watch the highlights, after Oxford score, I think the only highlight for us is the Shipley, was it or wasn't it a penalty? It was great defending. And Oxford chances. And that's our issue.
I have to give credit to someone who I usually can't stand, in that Carl Robinson, for me, is usually the very sort of poster boy of that kind of play football in the right way rhetoric. Do you know what I mean? That kind of, we might have lost, but at least we tried to play football, blah, blah, bollocks or whatever. And actually, I was really impressed with how he put out a team that so perfectly stifled us. I did think that, like you say, you used the phrase that they, what did you say, that you played, they played the game that they needed to against us or something like that. I just thought they came and did what we struggle to deal with, and I've not ever seen his teams do that before. And admittedly, I'm not a Carl Robinson expert or anything, but that I'm used to him trying to be on the front foot and pass the ball around and everything, and they just didn't, did they? They stifled us. They kept it really tight and compact. They knew that we would cut inside. They gave us space out wide. and blocked us off. I just when I was watching it break down, I couldn't help but think to myself, this is as much us misfiring as at least it is them having set up in such a way that was how you would set up to stop us, wasn't it?
Yeah, I thought they got it right, and
Yeah.
and I think, as I said, we have 4 or 5 players who have to be playing really well for us to get results. So we need to take our opportunities. Obviously, if we'd have taken our chance at the start of the game, then it would have been completely different. But like that was the worst I've seen Bayliss for a while, and you weren't surprised when he went off. I said, Dion Sterling is no longer making those marauding runs forward. Maybe he's just tired, maybe he's out of form, but he had his worst game for a while. I said they just kept giving the ball to Jordan Willis, and you're just like, I know people rate him, and I know I don't. It's a stereotype for me to go, he can't pass, but fucking hell, when he passes the ball out of play, and what was going to be my moment of the week before last night was in about the 92nd minute or something, the ball went to him, and he just smacked the ball out of play, and Pritchard just started pissing himself. Went, yeah, that sums us up, doesn't it? And you're like, well, that just sums up Jordan Willis. It's just. That's his issue. That's why I know. He could have gone somewhere else. I think you can't be that bad at playing football. It can't be that stark. And that was just, they stopped us getting those momentum, and they stopped us building up a head of steam. And that's sometimes what it's about, isn't it? The problem is now with Doncaster having thumped Bristol Rovers, is it means we have to go to Barnsley now and get a result.
But does it change the dynamic of it too much? Because, I mean...
Yeah, we would have been in the plairoffs. And I think you walk out that
sorry,
game...
I don't mean that. I mean, sorry, the Doncaster match. Just does that change things from them winning or not winning?
Yeah, because... sorry, I think it does, because their next game's Walsall at home. And Walsall... they could be, if we don't get anything out of the Barnsley game, they'll be, 7 points ahead of us? Or 8 points ahead of us?
Or they could get a draw against Walsall and we could beat Barnsley.
Beat Barnsley, yeah. But the thing is, it's sort of... They've taken it. They've had that game in hand and they've taken it, haven't they? They're now 4 points ahead of us.
But my assessment of it was always that to get ahead of the Doncaster, regardless of whether they won tonight, we have to win more games than them, and one of those needs to be them, doesn't it? Because we're playing them. Last game of the season.
Last game of the season. Yeah.
Last game of the season.
They can now lose that game against us and still.
But like I say, if we win more games, that sort of dynamic doesn't change. Where I sort of think, if they're my benchmark, if once we're level, we're kind of level on games, we have to win more games than them and then beat them the last game of the season. Which
we have to win 2 more games than them. Yeah, basically we have to.
No, we don't have to win 2 more games than them, because we beat them. If we beat them, that's the game that we make up 3 points on them. So it's just 1 more game.
Okay, we have to win 1 more game than them.
That's just us being very about which games we need to win and what we don't need to win. Obviously, that's the broad point is kind of the same.
The problem is now is sort of we've only got 7 games left. Yeah. They've got 7 games left. I think they've got more games at home. Their home form's extremely good. 4 of our away games against the teams who are currently 2nd, 3rd, and 4th.
And it's not.
But I fancy us to have a crack at them, yeah.
Yeah, if we've not learned anything, surely by this point in our lives we realise that even vaguely trying to predict what's going to go on in the next 7 games is just futile. We
might get knocked all over the place, mightn't we?
We could get 7 losses and see you later.
Yeah, but I sort of think, actually, in a bizarre way, actually, I quite fancy us to go to teams who, bearing in mind that it's still really tight at the top for 2nd and 3rd and 4th and whatever else, the playoffs doesn't really exist, does it? There's a bunch of teams that are going for automatic promotion. There's maybe Charlton are sort of like marooned in playoff land. And actually, is that all of them teams at home, when we go there, are going to have to come for us, and they'll play right into our hands in the same way that's how we didn't want Oxford to play against us. Actually, I really fancy, we might get smashed all over the place, but I would much rather see us play a load of teams at the end of the season who are going to come and have a go for us, because they'll create the space that we need to operate in. And I sort of think that's when we do best, isn't it? Is when, and maybe not earlier in the season, but certainly at the moment, we want teams to be coming at us and we want to spring them. I sort of think let's see how it goes. No matter what happened, even sort of 2 or 3 weeks ago, when we were like sort of 12 games left, we probably needed to win about 9 or 10 of them, didn't we? And nothing's changed. We need to win the vast majority of the games that we've got left. We've just made it harder for ourselves, unnecessarily so. Yeah. But it's still, I think we could. it was going to be really hard last week, and it's about as hard now. But I still think you say, well, let's fucking go for it, because why not?
And I don't want to get into the realms of kind of jumping between. 1 week we're suddenly all up because we've won and then lost again. I know it's really exciting at this point in the year, because the moment you do win, like we did last week, and you listen back to the pod, we were like positively giddy about everything that was going on, and then obviously this week there's a more of a sort of a reserved attitude towards it, and that's, I know it's natural, but at the same point, like, just it doesn't necessarily. Let's just see how they are. Let's just see how they get on. I mean, they're still in it. We know now that it's very difficult to predict kind of what sort of team is going to come out. But I'm with you, where I kind of think if we're trying to pick kind of ideal opponents, those opponents that at least give us you'd hope give us a little bit more sort of freedom on the break, for someone like Brighton, Hawula and Thomas to kind of at least threaten them. That's what I'm hoping for, really.
The way that I see it, we are a matter of points away from the playoffs, and our first choice striker at the moment is Amadou Bakayoko. All bets are off. Up is down. Black is white. Anything can happen at this point. Yeah. Paul, just before you go on to what you were going to say, I wanted to ask you about Luke Thomas, because I think you and me might be in the same boat, that it might be time for him to have a bit of a rest.
Yeah, I think that's been for a while, and the problem is, you did look at the bench on Saturday, and you looked at it, and there was a right back, a left back, a centre back, a defence midfielder, Jordan Shipley, who, what position is Jordan Shipley's best position, and Jordan Ponticelli, who played 3 times this season. You take Luke Thomas out, are you strengthening the team? I think if we had someone who was more probably reliable than Shipley, the problem is you've got Shipley there, is it does make your team extremely one-paced.
How can you be more reliable than Jordan Shipley? I don't. How on earth is that? Surely, if you can rely on anything, it's for the kind of industrious workman-like 6 out of 10 performance from Jordan.
Well, I mean, that's been
Shipley.
sort of quite kind to quite a lot of his performances this season, where 6 out of 10 probably 2 more than you'd have given him.
I'm joking, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, I think
that is the question, though, isn't it? Like you say, Paul. Carry on.
I was just on the previous conversation. I think the main frustrating thing out of the whole thing that happened on Saturday, and sort of temper your. I know, we have this. Yeah, we're better against the good sides. I still think that, as the case may be, we're still playing 3 of the top 4, and I think we need to win. If we are going to get in the playoffs, we'd probably have to pick up at least 6 or 7 points out of those 3 games. Which, if we do that, then it's going to be remarkable. I think was the fact that once we were 1-0 down, there didn't seem to be, from anywhere, like I completely agree with you, from the crowd, from the players themselves, you didn't look at that team and think, if they win this, they go 6th. You looked at that team and went, they don't seem to be that bothered if they win or lose this. And that was quite stark and quite a bit depressing, actually. And I think it was the same with the crowd. The crowd didn't really sort of believe it either. I think part of the issue was that everyone knew that if we won, we'd go 6th. And I think it was almost, for the first time this season, the expectation of, we will win this, we will go 6th. But I think that's where we're at, isn't it? We've got that team where we are just on the borderline, but you need to come from behind at some point to snatch a draw or a victory. You need to have that something else about you, and that was the disappointing thing about Saturday, was once we went behind, we basically gave up.
But conversely, we've kind of seen over the last sort of 10 games the other side of them as well. We've seen they don't score a load of goals, but it still feels like quite a rampant team. I mean, the Peterborough game, but we smashed them, and it's just like I don't want to just pick on, okay, that was the last game, so that is the performance kind of level that we think we're probably going to see the season out with, when actually you look at that, we won 5 out of 7. I didn't think that performance. I said I don't think that performance was any different from Accrington or Fleetwood. I don't think the Peterborough performance was any different to some of the other times that I think. If you look at it from a standpoint of capability, so how well can we play? How well can that team play? And I get that it's far harder to surpass your absolute maximum versus actually when you drop a level. That seems to happen a lot more. But I think there are still so many examples this season where we have played very well. And what I don't want to do is get into a situation where we're kind of we ignore those and we reference all the bad parts about the season and not the good parts, which, as inexplicable as it feels, have actually got us to this position that we're in now. I think there's still enough for us to at least feel, because you mentioned being frustrated earlier, and I think we're all frustrated because the weekend was a really good opportunity for us to consolidate ourselves as the favourites. But I'm going to put it out there just so it's on record. I'm not disheartened at all. And that's probably me forcing myself not to be disheartened a little bit, but also just because we said before the match, and this is wow, like 90 minutes can change it. Before the match, we were talking about, well, that team picks itself now, doesn't it? We kind of felt like we've developed a unit. After the game, I hear a bunch of people talking about, oh, we need to probably change 3 or 4, don't we? We need to change the lineup. It could just be that the dynamics and the circumstances within that match of the weekend caused that result, and maybe there is something still in the locker. I don't like the idea of writing off all the good stuff as opposed to the bad stuff.
I'm not writing it off. I think what I'm frustrated by is the fact that there was no good stuff after they scored. The players who had been playing well didn't step it up after they scored.
I agree, yeah.
And that's not, again, you go back this season, we've lost 7 of our 8 home games. When we go behind, we don't tend to come back and get a result, especially at home. And that's highly frustrating. And on Saturday, some of the big players didn't perform. And yes, recently they have been performing well. And as I said, yeah, you're correct. We have won 5 or 6 of the last number of games. The question is how do we go forward from here? I agree. I don't think you do drop any of the players. Thomas is probably the only one. You could even, there's question marks over Sterling, but I think that that's going to happen at this time for those players. I just think we have to accept the reality that we're playing very, very difficult teams. We are a team who can easily lose 5 or 6 on the bounce as much as we can win 5 or 6 on the bounce. The question marks over the team don't seem to be going away. The frustrating thing is that we are no better off now, in fact worse off than we have been after the last 2 of the 3 home games where we played Burton and bloody Oxford, where both times we've been behind, we've sort of struggled our way through. It is a wasted opportunity. There's no way of looking at it other than the fact that we played poor teams at home and we picked up 3 points out of 9. And if we'd have picked up those 6 points, we would be in the playoffs. We'd be comfortably in the playoffs with those difficult games to come. And it's just a case of it. We are where we are. We have to go forward from here. I don't think anyone, as I wasn't overly disappointed with the performance on Saturday because I've seen that performance before. What frustrated me is the lack of application after we went behind. That's my concern because that's where that will happen in the running where you're behind and you have to come back and you have to win games. We can't rely on taking the lead and winning every game from in front. We can't be, the chances of that happening are probably quite slim. So it's how you respond into those adversity, how the players respond in that adversity. They didn't show it on Saturday. That's the only thing we can go off. This season, when we go behind, especially at home, we don't come back. That might happen again. It might happen in one of the away games. We need to start showing that application when things aren't going in our favour. And I think, that's going to be the big thing going into the playoffs. I do think it's the big thing now that Doncaster have got, they can lose and we're not going to overtake them. I think that's what disappoints me over the Oxford game is the fact that we had the opportunity to go 2 points clear into the playoffs. Barnsley, we can say, we're better against those sort of teams. They're second for a reason, and they've got a fantastic home form. You don't think anyone else would go, what we want is those teams. They're extremely difficult games, and I just find the fact that the Oxford game was probably the best opportunity we've had for a while to really stamp our authority on it, and too few of the players stood up.
I think that's probably something that none of us would disagree with, and possibly a good opportunity to move on. So let's speak to Dom to find out about Barnsley, and then we'll wrap up with some questions, and we're all done. Hi Dom, thanks for joining us.
Hey, no worries. Good to be on.
Question 1. Will Barnsley be joining Coventry City in the Championship next season?
That's a good question. They're certainly looking on course to play their part in this dual role. They've been one of the best teams in the division, maybe slightly below expectations, but it's been interesting past 18 months for Barnsley, where they've had a new takeover. They're owned by the same group which also own, I believe, Niis in France, and there's a orientation there to bring in a more continental model. They've brought in Daniel Stendel as the manager, but he's still largely working with a squad that was assembled in the years prior, which was very much the best young players from Leagues 1 and 2, which for a season in the Championship were absolutely incredible until that was broken up. So it's sort of a bit of a piecemeal squad, although in League 1 terms relatively expensively assembled, and you're seeing that on the pitch where they have the most clean sheets, and as an attacking unit they can be very deadly. They're very much a pressing side. At times they take risks and leave gaps at the back, but that defensive record, 20 clean sheets already this season, just shows that they are a very good side at both ends of the pitch.
Yeah, and 2 attackers in Kiefer Moore and Corley Woodrow, who are going to cause most people problems, yeah.
Yeah, and I suppose another thing about how incredible Barnsley's season has been is that they've been dealing with some big key injuries at certain points of the season. At the moment, Kiefer Moore is out for the rest of the season, and so is their defensive midfielder Kenny Dougal. But still, there's so much quality in reserve in that team. So with Kiefer Moore injured, they can call on Corley Woodrow, who was England under-21 international, big prospect at Fulham. They've brought him in over the summer for around £1 million, and he's scoring goals at quite a good rate after taking a little bit of time to actually get integrated in the team and getting going. And then they've got some pacey wide attackers. They've got Mamadou Thiam, who is a player who just absolutely loves shooting. You'll notice him on Saturday because whenever he'll pick up the ball with 25, 30 yards to goal, he will shoot. They've got Jacob Brown, who's a local youngster who's just breaking into the side. Very rapid player, scored the winner at Walsall at the weekend where they weren't actually playing that well. And then they've got Jordan Green, they can bring from the bench, who used to be at Yeovil and was one of their best players. And then their overlapping right back, Dimitri Kavari, is a very interesting, quick attacking player, likes to cut inside and shoot as well. So just adds to that diverse threat. And then in central midfield, they've got Alex Murrett, who is another player who a few years ago was a really big youth prospect. Murrett was, the best young player for a while, seemed to lose his way a little bit, and wasn't even part of Barnsley's plans 6 months after signing him last year when they sent him on loan to Oxford. And he wasn't particularly impressive at Oxford either, but he's come back to Barnsley this season and has been a key orchestrator in midfield, whether that's playing in the centre or to the left. And he's been partnered by Cameron McGeehan at the moment. Again, another young, very good technical player, up and coming, who was big prospect at Luton. Was really seen as someone who was a very attack-minded central midfielder and couldn't really play as a 2. And as a result of the injury to Kenny Dougal, Barnsley have tried to convert him into a more defensive-minded midfielder relatively successfully, but that might be an area to exploit just behind Barnsley's midfield, looking to counter-attack as they push players forward and take the risk that they like to take. Although in Ethan Pinnock and Liam Lindsay have a very good central defensive pairing, interesting both left-footers as well, but they're both physical, technically very good, and have got a good amount of pace to them. So not necessarily the easiest team in the world to catch in the counter-attack. And it's going to be a big test for us.
Finally, any surprise in not seeing any Coventry players in the team of the season?
I suppose the interesting thing, like even when I've been going through it, thinking of who is our player of the season, who is like the one player who's been good and consistently good for us this season. We've had players who've had a lot of up and downs, I think. So I don't think it's necessarily that surprising that we haven't had a player who's really sort of caught the eye enough to be considered the best in their position in the division. Yeah, so that's that.
Anything else?
I can't really think of anything.
Right, speak to you next week.
All right, speak to then.
Thanks, Dom. Okay, before we go into the Twitter questions, and before I forget about it, we are up in the Football Blogging Awards again, so we're begging for votes. We've got our cap in our hand with internet money being requested to be thrown in. Not internet money, but, just Twitter votes. If you like us, can you do us a huge favour? Not even if you like us. How would you describe that?
If you're listening to this now.
If you're listening to this now, yeah. Bearing in mind that, and I know that I always sort of veer between being nice and being chippy, but we have done this for 7 years for free. And it's the only thing we ask for back in return, isn't it? You can either go to footballbloggingawards.co.uk and you can vote for us on their website and to go for us for best podcast. Or if you go on the pinned tweet on @NeilAmptyShow on Twitter, you just need to click the link in there and it creates a tweet that does a vote. We would really, really appreciate it. It's back in Manchester this year, which means that Neil might not have the indignity of being called Neil Lamptey when he sits down for dinner. But hopefully it might be an opportunity for the three of us to all be in the same room, which would be nice, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. We can invite Dom this year as well, actually. We might. Maybe we'll go like a massive table. Maybe we'll get our own table this year. Get Ed and Laurie and CJ and whoever else wants to come on. Maybe we can sort of sublet tickets for it. In fact, for anybody that wants to be part of our
honorary Lampteys.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, get our own. Get the whole, because it's at the Etihad this year, isn't it?
Can we have a stand?
Yeah. Right, so that's that done. Let's go to Twitter then. So, first up, friend of the show, Ian Heron asks, Neil, can you do your Oxford review in the style of Alan Partridge?
No, I cannot.
No, you can't go backwards in time. But you've been enjoying this time, have you, Neil?
I have, actually. I think it's grown into itself. The one last week was very good. And I watched the other one on the train today and had to prevent myself from laughing quite a lot. Caused some pain, but it was good.
It's probably more of a testament to how good the rest of Alan Partridge is that I think I laughed pretty much all the way through it, and yet I still sort of think, yeah, it's not as good as
yeah, exactly.
Even Mid-Morning Matters, and yet I'm pretty much solidly laughing all the way through it. Paul, have you been watching it?
I watched the first couple. I'm just not that bothered. I know you two are massive fans. I thought it was a bit more. I think it's a bit. Someone made a point that it's difficult to play that role now when you've got Piers Morgan doing it in real life, and I think that's almost sort of the point of it, isn't it? It's just like when you can't be satirical against someone that's so overbearing like Piers Morgan, because you can imagine Alan Partridge would be like Piers Morgan on Twitter. So yeah, it's sort of, when does real life become parody?
I also think that he's now so established as a character, like that writing team and the body of work that sits behind it. So I've read the books and there's all of the different kind of stuff. It's now so all-encompassing that actually him behaving like he behaves, you kind of just go, yep, because I mean that's your character. And actually, it's almost like it's reached sort of like it's at itself, and that's almost a compliment. But it's so thorough, isn't it, that you you're almost watching it like he's real rather than it being a comedy character.
It's a bit like where Al Murray just had to explain to people that his views were, you laugh at his views, you don't agree with them.
Yeah,
it's once you get to that point, it must be quite. I thought he was really good as Stan Roll out of Laurel and Hardy.
Oh, did you go and watch that? Did you?
He was brilliant at that. I think he is a real. I don't think he's probably particularly the nicest guy in the world, even though he went to the toilet in my office. But I I think he's.
Well, you're gonna have to tell.
amazing
Whoa.
performance.
You're gonna have to tell us that.
A couple of questions, yeah.
Yeah.
How is that a benchmark for niceness?
Oh no, he was it Happiness? I think directed by what's his name? Who was in the Royal Family?
Craig Cash.
Yeah, Craig Cash. They filmed a program called, I think it was called Happiness in Marple, and our office is at the bottom of the locks in Marple, and basically he needed somewhere to go to the toilet, so he came to our, and we had the Steve Coogan Memorial toilet for a bit. And so our bosses didn't really agree with that, so we had to take down the sign. But yeah.
I tell you what, my great fear on this this podcast is that I come across to you, Paul, like that reporter who basically disagrees with everything that Partridge says on this time. Basically, I just sit there thinking, I don't want to disagree all the time in case I come. That reference was probably lost on you because if you've not watched too much of it, but she's an absolute swine.
I did like the one where they were talking about the guy who died.
Yeah.
I thought that was brilliant. I think that was sort of the way, and especially towards Twitter when it was going on about him maybe abusing people and like the whole. Yeah, I thought that was genius. Anyway.
Segue.
Yeah, this pod's gone very strange. I suppose that's the problem with a game that was, not the greatest, is more like to go off on tangents to fill our obligatory hour.
I think as the season wears on as well, as we're probably getting very, very tired, aren't we? So, in fact, yeah, we're very much like Luke Thomas, who could do with the rest. Al Jazza on Twitter says, would we potentially be top of the league if Luke Thomas had the composure of Gary McSheffrey? Is that fair, unfair, Neil?
I think it's somewhat fair. I think we'd probably be a far different team if earlier on in the season he'd developed his shooting boots and would have been able to continue on. I think it's just become a bit of a thing now, hanging over him, which causes him issues in those positions. Because I think altogether he's had quite a decent season and he's a real threat and he gets into good positions, but not scoring the goals which change games.
Question here from Steve CJ they're all from Twitter. I don't know why I keep saying on Twitter. I actually don't know what this means, but hopefully you two might be able to shed some light on it. He says, what are your thoughts on the match sponsors having pictures taken with the captains and ref before the game? Apparently this is a key discussion point according to the BBC that you never cover on the pod.
No, this is a big pet peeve of Clive. Every time he's usually quite sort of docile when it comes to sort of talking about the match, but for some reason he has a massive issue with sponsors joining players on the pitch beforehand and having their photo taken. They've paid their money, Clive, leave him alone. But no, he's just every away game he's on it. Crazy. He
has certain especially pre-game where I think content is probably thin. I think he does err into what a new episode of What Grinds My Gears, doesn't he? It's kind of when he's sort of still on the ground of things to say, is he's just like, blah 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 blah. The referees specifically around, I can't think of an example for it, but there's plenty in there.
Just don't slag off referees. He's allowed to because he wasn't a referee apparently, but anybody else coming into questioning the referee, he's straight at that defence.
Quite. And then so next from Biamu's Bike, we've sort of touched on this. So is it time that we give players such as Thomas and possibly Sterling a rest for at least one game? Thomas has certainly seemed off the ball for the last few matches. We talked about Thomas definitely, and somebody, Paul, I think you mentioned it very briefly about Sterling. Do you think players get a bit? Now we are very pro having a very settled team, aren't we? But do you think one game makes much of a difference in terms of a rest? Or does it have to be a couple of weeks, anything like that? Have you got any idea?
I don't know. It's Thomas does look a bit. It must be hurting his confidence, missing so many sitters. I don't think you'd be human if you weren't getting slightly frustrating. And you can talk about hyperbole, but we're talking in the last 3 home games, he's missed at least one sitter, and they are big moments in games. We go back to the Burton game where we got it back to 1-1. And then within 5 minutes of him missing the sitter, we were down to 10 men and 2-1 behind. I think, that's going to start playing on your mind. In terms of Sterling, I was surprised by how little he was getting forward against Oxford. I think when we were looking for substitutions, it wouldn't have surprised me if he'd have brought on Grimmer just to sort of get someone up and down the pitch. Maybe I mean, we don't really know where Grimmer's mind's at the moment as well, do we? Because Grimmer again wouldn't be human if
he wants to go.
At it. Well, I mean, he's going, isn't he? I mean, he's basically said that, and you just wonder. And this isn't, before anyone has a go, this isn't me calling out Grimmer, because I think it's just the way that every single human would be. He knows he's not going to be here next season. There does come to that thing. It's like this 50-50. Do I go for it full-hearted? And that's nothing to do with Grimmer. That would be literally, I'd say that about any player who was going through that. They're definitely not going to be here next season. Do you sort of have that at the back of your mind of, if I get clattered in this, basically I'm unemployable? It's a big task, isn't it? It's a big ask for those sort of players. It's a big ask for those sort of things, because you do see it not as much in football, but there's quite high-profile stories in American football. I know where people have sort of turned down contracts and then snap their Achilles in the next game. It's a big thing. So, I think that's what this time of the season you have got those issues, haven't you? Maybe that is playing on Burge's mind as well, is the fact that, he knows he's in the shop window. There's rumours of him going to Hull, isn't there?
Yeah, but have you seen where they're from?
I know it's all Twitter bollocks, but I think you got that sort of surrounding at the moment where we don't seem to have offered him a new contract. And, it's going to be, I think you'd only be human, wouldn't you, if you're thinking, shit, in 6 months' time, where the hell will I be living? Where will I be playing?
Yeah, that I get, but I don't think for a second that we haven't. I just can't imagine that we've not offered him a contract. What I can imagine is him having said, "Don't bother because I'm going." That I can get, but I can't imagine that he sat there going, "Oh God, I wish they'd offer me a contract and I'm not being offered one." I just don't believe that that would be the case. Do you?
I don't know.
Do we think that we can get? I mean, despite the way that a lot of the fans feel about him, do you really think that Robbins would think to himself, "Do you know what? I can probably reinvest the money that I've got from for the nothing that I'm going to get for Burge, to get to take a punt on another keeper"? I just don't see it.
I think he might.
Do you really? Okay.
Just based on this half of the season, I think he might be looking at it. Just seeing that maybe he thinks it's not salvageable. I don't know, because you kind of mentioned the other week, didn't you, after that mistake, when also the fans, the way they kind of are so fickle against him, maybe he's going to just make a call and sort of think, well, let's see what else we can do.
Final nail in the coffin might have been me calling him rubbish earlier as well. That might have been the final. Yeah.
We do have that.
I wanted to finish off today by talking about something that we sort of very briefly chatted about amongst ourselves the other day, but I do think probably bears mentioning, which is the, I'm going to say it, the absolutely spineless question that was put to Coventry City fans by the EFL this week about, it was, so I'm just looking for it now and I'll find it in a second. Basically, the question was, you know how we'd said that we wouldn't let you play outside of Coventry? Well, we're now going to abdicate responsibility by asking you to decide whether you'd be happy to see the club go out of business, or would you be happy to see them play 50 miles outside of Coventry?
Yeah.
Well, you think, that's not a fuck. You can't. Sorry, you can't only have those two options. Like, that's ridiculous.
But also, you can't. It's difficult from. And this has always been a point of contention, is it's difficult for the EFL to turn around and go, you can't move out of Coventry, because... But
they did.
No, but I know they did, but you can't say that, because then you're affecting negotiations between two businesses, which is basically the rent agreement between WAS and Coventry City Football Club. If basically you say you can't leave Coventry City, you've got to play at the Rico, then basically you're going to WAS, you've got the upper hand on any negotiations. And I know, but I think that is a big thing, isn't it? It's like, whatever we look at it, unfortunately, due to WAS owning the Rico, it is a financial obligation. It is an agreement that has to be made between two parties. If one of those parties has the upper hand with, you've got no choice. You've either got to liquidate the football club or agree to our terms. It's, from a business point of view, it's not great, is it? I mean, maybe they will sees you turn around and go, look, if you say that, we're going to sue you because you're preventing our business.
But they've kind of imposed those sort of sanctions already, not to the same extent, but they've said, look, you're going to get chucked out of the league if you can't tell us where you're going to be, which, while not as direct as saying you have to be in Coventry, is imposing some sort of penalty on us based on the fact that we can't make an agreement. And any normal business by this point probably would have taken that into account and maybe would have sort of checked their illegal, I don't want to get into it, but maybe would have folded. Sisu aren't quite like that, and they're probably going to play a hard ball as long as they need to, which is annoying for all of us. But yeah, I think the EFL, they do have sway to this point already, don't they?
But Paul, I completely agree with you. So if what they had have done is have not said anything, I would have been happy to have dealt with it that way. If they had have waded in and said, this is what we're saying and it's this, then it's fine. But it's the fact that the way that they've played it is that they've been criticised in the past about allowing the move to Northampton to happen, which you can argue yay or nay about whether it should have ever happened, and I guess really everyone would say no. But that now they've come in and said, oh, we're going to be seen to be taking a bigger hardline stance because of how we approached it last time. And then have now folded in such a way that they're making it seem like it's a fan decision. But the fan decision that they're presenting isn't anything that any fan would want. Like, even at the very least, if they'd have said, if it would have been, well, actually, you can play outside of Coventry, but the boundary that you could be allowed to play in was much tighter. Or that it doesn't allow for any shade of grey to it.
Yeah.
The choices are A, a ground share within 50 miles of Coventry, B, a ground share within 50 miles from Coventry subject to a binding commitment to return to Coventry within 3 years, or C, opposition to a ground share outside of Coventry as an alternative to expulsion from the AFL. Well, I kind of think, so what? Either, basically what that's saying is, do you want to be able to kill the club, or if not, they can play in Nottingham? You're going to go, well, they can't be the only options.
And it just doesn't cover that.
And that basically, I think they've seen their ass because they've gone, fucking hell, if Coventry go to the wall, we're going to get the blame for having imposed such a strict sanction. So we'll put the responsibility on the fans, and then if they go to the wall, we can say, well, we give the fans the option, and they said this. Or they can say, oh, we're playing in Nottingham, but it's because it's what the fans wanted. No, nobody wants any of those things.
Yeah.
But the way that you've levied it on us is it's like we're going to make that decision. And I kind of think, I'm really surprised that more people aren't annoyed that they were the options that the AFL have presented us.
And
at this point of the season as well. I could understand if they had stuck to their guns and gone, do you know what? We're not going to let you move out again. And you could have said, well, I disagree or I agree. But at least it's a principled stand. This is an absolute joke. To be able to chuck this up, basically, it's just saying, don't blame me. And I think, you absolute fucking spineless. Go on, sorry, Neil.
You're absolutely right. And it's almost with no outlet to actually show that annoyance. So, like you say, because there are these just very specific examples, they get results based on these examples. None of them are palatable to any of us, really, or us within it. And then kind of, that's a very broad statement. Most of us, we wouldn't really consider any of those, but there is no way for us to kind of sort of make that heard. It's kind of like, okay, these are the results, and it's this sort of contrived validation that they'll get out of this, which is my biggest concern. Because like you say, if they end up making a decision and using the results of this as, the majority of people were in favour of this solution, and like you say, there's no saying it is the majority of people. It's just the majority of people who have taken it upon themselves to, or felt forced to actually give an answer. There are plenty of people out there abstaining, refusing to engage in it.
I haven't voted,
because
so
exactly. And there's no way for that feedback mechanism. That's the worry. And I know it's kind of a trust-led thing, but there are so many Coventry City fans out there. If this is truly, I hate the idea that it's even down to sort of a fan vote, but if it is a fan vote, there needs to be some element of identifying those people who say, look, all three of those options are absolute shite. I don't want to put my hat on any of them.
Especially nowadays, I trust the trust to speak for Cov fans, and I think and I think had they have been engaged back 5 or 6 months ago, there could have been really meaningful discussions about how the EFL could have been a meaningful force for good. But as it is, instead, what they've done is they've kind of gone, actually, we could end up looking bad on this, so let's just do something that means that we can't get the blame. I think it's pathetic.
Yeah.
Go on, Paul, sorry.
I sort of don't disagree with anything you're saying. I think the problem is it should never have got to this point anyway, and that's one of the biggest issues with the whole thing, isn't it? The EFL is shit. We've known they've been shit. The whole management of all of these situations, every club that has been badly run, the sort of the way that they deal with all of these things is completely shit. And it's just, the problem is there is no easy way out of this situation. I think the problem is, I don't know, I suppose it's like the only comparison really is Brexit. It's just like the whole thing's a clusterfuck with no leadership from any side, and the people who are trying to sort of sort it out are the people who got us into this mess, but who are also just trying to look after themselves and trying to make themselves look as good as possible. It is what it is. I don't get angry at the EFL because it's like they're just useless. They've been useless from day one in the whole situation, the whole escalation of this mess. I said the only thing I'd sort of give them slight defence on is the fact that it's a shit situation because they can't be seen to be getting involved in negotiations between two sides, and that's the only problem with sort of staying in Coventry is because of the way that the council have. The only other ground they could have played in Coventry is the Butts, which the council have basically taken out off the table with their fucking rulings that it can't be used for football. So basically, the council have taken the only other option out. Sisu, whether or not you think they should drop their legal case, I don't know. I the whole thing. Still think that the sale of the Rico to the Wasps, even just if the council sell anything, shouldn't they get? They should have more. They should open it up for everyone to tender. The people of Coventry could have been given the opportunity. I know we're sort of strafing over old ground. So, if I was Sisu, would I drop the legal case? I don't know because I don't know too much. No one knows exactly what's going to happen on those. So to turn around and say, look, you need to drop the legal case, and I know Pritch had a go at me for this. Can we stop calling it legals because it makes us sound like we're six? Should they drop the legal case? From my point of view, yes, of course they should, because I want us to continue to exist. But unfortunately, football is a business. I don't think the negotiation of stop trying to sue us. If you did that with any other business, you wouldn't accept it. So I don't think why. I can understand why CZ aren't accepting that from the council. I can sort of see why CZ want to continue their legal case. I think what the council come out with today and basically said, look, sell up and you can continue to sue us. That sort of, it just continues. There's no one's like the fact the council didn't turn up to the fucking thing at Westminster is just beggars belief. But Cecil have made massive mistakes as well, because I know as soon as you start slagging off the council, people start calling you Cecil Simpson. Cecil are making massive mistakes as well. And that's why we're in the mess we're in. I just don't see an easy way out of it. Ideally, we'd stay at the Rico. I know, but I understand that that's not that simple. And it's just a case of it should be that simple, but it's not. And the easiest thing would be for Cecil to sell. But, Joe Elliott and Gary Hoffman apparently put in a bid. Great. The last time those two were involved, we ended up with Sisu.
Joe Elliott's put in a bid for the football club. There's talk about another ground share. We're begging for votes at the Football Blogging Awards.
Yeah, I mean,
there was it. The year is 2014.
Yeah, I mean, my only two final points really is I think the Trust did an amazing job when they went round with their bus journey last week.
Yeah,
and when
big clap for that.
Yeah, I think that deserves a lot of credit. And while the football club is a complete clusterfuck, again, Legends Day was amazing. They got the players in. It's you can see that the players want to be there. Huckabee was there this time. Speedy, there are more legends. There are some legends who are more than others. Stuart Giddings, I saw one guy giving a lot of stick to with how he's a legend, but he was England's future left back at one point when he was 18. So there are people associated with the club like Jim Brown, who we've had on, who do amazing stuff. And I think Dan Maley put it on last week that the football club's a clusterfuck, but the fan zone, the Legends Day, there are people who work their arse off to make this football club sort of something to be proud of. And sometimes they don't get the discussion. It's the arseholes who are beyond our control who seem to get all the limelight.
I'd like to wrap it up, but I do quickly want to say that it was a wonderful thing looking at the replies to that Dan Mallier tweet, because it was his tweet originally said, I know there's an awful lot going on, but can we take a moment to think about, and I think he mentioned like the family zone. He talks about the impact that Robbins has had, like he, kind of largely either on the pitch stuff or stuff that wasn't seesaw or whatever. He was like, let's try and not get overwhelmed by all of the nonsense that happens, and remember that there's an awful lot to do with the club. And like most people, either like favorited it or said, oh yeah, that's right or whatever. But there was a handful of people that either like responded disparagingly or whatever, but they all had got names like @Tim Fisher is gay, or they're like some Dave Body parody account or whatever. Like all of the people that disagreed with it had got these like laughable profiles that you'd imagine like an 8-year-old would create. And all it did is it just made you think, do you not think you need to take a look at yourself, lads? 'Cause
this is what we're up against.
It really made me think. I'm really glad that I'm on this side of the fence, because it's not a good world over where you are, where you can't even take the joy out of saying, yeah, you're right, there's some good stuff. So blinkered by the fact but that none of them had got their own avatars or their own name attached to anything. It's all these kind of like pseudo accounts where you're like, yeah, nice one, lads. Right, okay. Anybody, any final thoughts before we wrap up?
I best not. Keep moving.
By the way, me calling them lads there is an assumption. They might be women, except they're definitely not. Yeah. Right, okay. Little reminder then, go to footballbloggingawards.co.uk, go to @NeilAmptyShow on Twitter. Please help us out. We like to see each other occasionally. You'd think we'd be able to manage it at one of the football matches that we go to at the same time, but apparently that's too difficult for us, so we have to meet up in a city that Neil doesn't even live in. And yeah, that would be good. I think that's everything. So thank you, Neil.
Thank you, boys.
Thank you, Paul.
We didn't actually discuss Bright's performance at any point.
And thank
Bye.
you. Thank you, Bright. Bye, Bright.